The investment firm called me on a Wednesday. Not with urgency, with the specific careful tone of someone who has identified a situation that requires a conversation before it becomes something larger. The representative identified herself as Michelle Park from the Client Services Division, and said she was calling regarding account activity that she wanted to make sure I was aware of. She said there had been a withdrawal attempt on the investment account earlier that week. She said the attempt had been made in person at the firm's branch office, by someone who had presented identification in the name of my brother, Leila Harmon. She said the attempt had been flagged because the account's authorized holder had been updated 6 weeks earlier. She said the current authorized holder was me. Daniel had walked into the investment firm's branch office, presented his identification, and attempted to withdraw funds from an account that had been in my name for 6 weeks. I asked Michelle how much he had attempted to withdraw. She said the withdrawal request had been for $83,000. I asked if the withdrawal had been processed. He said it had not. She said the branch representative had followed standard protocol upon seeing the name discrepancy and had placed the transaction on hold pending verification from the account holder of record. She said she was calling me because I was the account holder of record. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are listening from. My name is Sophie Harlow. I am 32 years old. And the 6 weeks between my father's quiet Tuesday afternoon at the investment firm and my brother's Wednesday morning at the branch office, 6 weeks during which the account had been transferred, properly documented and recorded, is a story about what happens when a person acts on an assumption that the documentation has already disproved. My father had managed his investments carefully for 30 years. He had not been a dramatic investor, not someone who watched markets daily or chased particular strategies. What he had done was consistent and patient. Regular contributions to a portfolio he had built slowly, reviewed annually, and adjusted with the particular deliberateness of someone who understood that the value of money lies in its options rather than its immediate use. By the time of his final illness, the portfolio held $83,000, not a fortune by some measures, significant by his, the result of 30 years of consistent attention. My father had 2 children, me and my brother Daniel. Daniel and I have always had different relationships with money, different relationships with most things, which is the way of siblings who grow up in the same household and develop into people who would not necessarily have found each other as adults if they had not been family. Daniel's relationship with money had always been characterized by what I can describe only as a specific kind of optimism, the belief that the amount available was always approximately what he needed, which had led, over the years, to a pattern of borrowing and requesting and receiving that my parents had managed with the specific patience of people who love their children and have not yet decided what the limits of that love require in practice. My father had decided in the final year of his life that he needed to be specific. He had come to this decision through his illness, a slow-moving cardiac condition that had not been immediately life-threatening but that had made him, in the way that illness makes certain people, more deliberate about the gap between what he intended and what the documentation reflected. He had met with his financial advisor 6 weeks before he passed. He had transferred the investment account, the full portfolio $83,000, into my name as the account holder. He had done this through the proper process: a formal account transfer, signed paperwork, verification of my identity, updated records at the firm. He had told me about the transfer in the way he told me things that mattered, directly, without excessive explanation, trusting me to understand what he meant and why. He had said, "I've moved the investment account into your name. I wanted it settled while I could still settle it myself." I had said I understood. He had said, "Your brother doesn't know." I had not asked why he had not told Daniel. I had not needed to. My father passed 6 weeks after the transfer. The week of his passing had the particular weight of a week that contains too many things simultaneously: the arrangements, the notifications, the administrative weight of a death that does not pause for the grief it is accompanied by. Daniel had been present during that week. He had helped with arrangements in the specific ways he was capable of helping: logistics, phone calls, the visible tasks. He had also apparently spent part of that week calculating. I do not know the specific moment at which Daniel had decided to go to the investment firm's branch. I do not know what he had believed about the account status, whether he had assumed it was still in my father's name or whether he had somehow known about the transfer and believed the transfer was something he could work around. What I know is what Michelle Park told me: that Daniel had walked into the branch on a Wednesday morning, 3 days after my father's funeral, and had attempted to withdraw $83,000. He had not called me first. He had not mentioned the account in any of the conversations we had had during the week of arrangements. He had simply gone. I called my attorney before I called Daniel. Her name was Sandra Park. She had helped me with a previous estate matter and had the specific quality of being reachable on short notice for things that require immediate assessment. I told her what Michelle had told me. She asked 3 questions: whether the transfer had been properly documented by the firm, whether I had received confirmation of the transfer at the time it had been made, and whether Daniel had any legal claim to the account under my father's estate documents. The transfer had been properly documented. I had the confirmation. And my father's will, which Sandra had reviewed as part of the previous estate matter, addressed his estate assets in terms that did not include the investment account, because the investment account had been transferred out of his estate and into my name 6 weeks before he passed. She said, "Sophie, the account is yours. The transfer is documented. Daniel's attempt was stopped before any funds were released. The situation is legally clear." She said the question was how I wanted to proceed with Daniel. I said I needed to think about it. She said she would be available. I thought about it for 1 day. Not because the legal situation was unclear. Sandra had been specific about that. But because Daniel was my brother and because the week of my father's death was not a week in which I had the capacity for an additional significant confrontation, and because I wanted to be certain before I spoke to him that I was saying what I actually meant rather than what the shock of the Wednesday call had produced. I called him on Thursday afternoon. He answered immediately. He sounded the way he sounds when he is managing something. A specific quality of controlled ease that I have learned over years of knowing him is most present when he has done something he is not sure of. I said, "Daniel, the investment firm called me yesterday. The ease dissolved." I said, "You went to the branch on Wednesday morning and tried to withdraw $83,000. He said he had needed to take care of something." I said, "The account was transferred into my name 6 weeks ago. Dad transferred it before he passed. The branch flagged your attempt because my name is on the account, not yours." He said he had not known about the transfer. I said, "Dad told me when he made the transfer that he had not told you. I am telling you now so that you have the complete information." He was quiet. I said, "Daniel, Dad made a decision. He made it 6 weeks before he passed and he had it properly documented. He did not make it without thinking about it. He made it specifically." Another silence. He said, "He should have talked to me." I said, "He talked to me. He made a decision. The decision is documented." He said it was not fair. I said, "I hear that this is painful. I'm not going to argue about whether it is fair. What I am going to tell you is that the account is mine and that it was mine before Dad passed and that Wednesday's visit to the branch is something Sandra Park has documented in her files." He said he understood. I said, "I hope you do. The investment account remains in my name. The funds are where they were when my father transferred them, in the portfolio he had built across 30 years, which I have not touched and do not intend to touch without careful thought, because 30 years of consistent attention deserves more than a hasty decision. I am having my father's financial advisor review the portfolio. Not because I distrust the portfolio, he had managed it well. But because understanding what I have inherited requires understanding what it is, which requires the kind of attention my father gave it. Daniel and I have spoken twice since the Thursday call. Both conversations have been careful. The kind of careful that exists between people who are deciding what the relationship holds after something has changed in it. I have not decided what the relationship holds going forward. I am letting that question find its own answer in its own time, which is how my father would have approached it. He was patient about most things. He made his decisions carefully and documented them properly and trusted the documentation to reflect his intentions after he was gone. The investment firm called me on a Wednesday. Michelle Park had followed standard protocol. Standard protocol in this case had protected 30 years of my father's careful work. He would have appreciated that. He had always believed in the right process.